Welcome everyone, Costin here on Serious Gaming with the discussion on Kingdom Come Deliverance. Mods for the game as well as what I think of the game so far based on what I've played. Now mind you, I am still fairly far away from the end of the game. I haven't progressed all that much in the main story because I've mostly focused around side activities in Ratay, Nohav, Ledeshko, and I still obviously need to go to Talnberg, Sasau, and Ushkits. There's quite a lot of things I do want to say, but first I do want to talk about mods for this game. The first one is a way to disable depth of field, as you can see here. But this is not so much a mod that you download, it's some files you need to modify yourself. There's a guide on how to do that. Now, CryEngine does allow this capability, but there is no setting to disable depth of field. And quite frankly, I wish there was. I have never understood this love that developers have for depth of field. Quite frankly, most of the games that do have it, well, in most of the games that do have it, it's actually quite shit. Especially in a game where you do have a lot of static conversations where they, for some reason, decide to implement depth of field. Could we please just move away from this whole depth of field situation, or just give people the option of being able to disable it? Would be very nice. An actual mod I'm using, or Reshade, is, well, Reshade brings out the colors more, makes them more vibrant, makes darker areas darker, and just makes the whole game look more alive as opposed to being washed out or dull. It's hard to understand game developers on this level either. Especially when you look at the pre-rendered cutscenes in this game, or a lot of their trailers, they do bring the colors out more in those, but then wash them out in the rest of the game. Why must it be so dull and boring? It's a lively game, a realistic game. Bring the colors out instead of just washing them out. I don't know on that level. So yeah, there is a Reshade available that does that. There's also a mod that I'm using that enables volumetric fog. Obviously, CryEngine does support that. The game has that disabled by default. Again, another thing I just can't understand. Maybe it's not to your taste, but you know, this is why we have graphical settings in games. You can enable and disable what you don't want. If only developers would just allow people to be able to do that in the first place. Mind you, this game does have a lot of optimization issues. It's fairly demanding, and it does feel as if it's unfinished. Though this game did have a significant number of hurdles to overcome. They had a significant number of hurdles to overcome while actually making the game. So the fact there's even a game in the first place after close to a decade of development, very troubled development that basically forced them to go to Kickstarter if they wanted to actually get the game done. Well, having a game in the first place is a significant achievement. Having a game that looks this amazing as well is a monumental achievement in my opinion, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Another mod I am using is one that removes the blurry effect when you are close to running out of stamina. Also removes the blood effect when you are very low HP. You can choose to disable the Henry's panting when you are low HP or when you're running out of stamina, if you so desire. I've chosen to do so. There are various versions to this mod. Another mod is one when it comes to Archery. And what this does is it removes the arrow trails. By the way, what's the point of removing the reticle, having the quote-unquote realistic archery system, and then having arrow trails, which, by the way, are not actually that useful? A hint, by the way, a tip to people. If you want to actually shoot a bow, you look at where the tip of the arrow is before actually shooting. I'll give props to the developers for the fact they actually don't use the term firing, which so many people do use, that arrows do actually penetrate. There is a damage model. It is a bit weird though that arrows don't seem to suffer damage, and nor do bows, I think. If I look at this bow here, you know, the archery just seems like a secondary affair. to the melee combat. Obviously, they had to have it because, well, guess what? This was fairly significant. But not really archery, not in Bohemia. You know what they invented? Oh, right. Modern handguns. Well, they have their roots there. But they invented the handgun. Yeah, they did. This is the place where they did. Like, Bohemia is where they did. They even had wars where they were fighting with handguns not too long in the distant future from the time the events in this game take place. And handguns were widespread. They would be pretty bad, but they would exist. Oh, a broken arrow. Finally. So arrows can actually be broken. Interesting. Okay. Guess you can get recoil. Or shoot through. Alright. So, a mod that removes the arrow trails as well. And then finally there's a mod that I can't actually show without getting myself involved in a very large scale fight, but one that improves the lock-on system on enemies. These are mods that don't make such a significant change, but just, you know, fix some of the issues that obviously exist in this game. Now, how do I feel about the game? Well, I do need to start with a fairly big problem I actually do have with the title. And that's the pre-order bonus bullshit that they engaged in. I mean, I am a Kickstarter backer to this game, and obviously I am biased to this game, and I do like the game overall, but that was a really dick move, Warhorse. And no, I don't care about justification. You don't get to wave the banner around that, oh, we are doing something unique that most publishers wouldn't support and didn't want to support, that they turned us down, and give us all those stories about how you struggled to build a game, and then do something like that. Because you know what it is? It's a bitch slap. And it shows, to me at least, it does make me think that all that stuff about Kickstarter, yeah, it was a desperate last move because no one would support them. But the moment that they could get the publisher, they did so. Now, to be fair, they did get initial investment for this game from a private investor. And the idea was always to get the publisher on board. So there's obviously quite a lot of backdoor discussions. It just feels like a really dick move to me. And it is actually significant. It is buying power with the pre-order bonus. You know why? Because the stuff you have, the Warhorse gear, is actually really powerful. You get very powerful items, a lot of coin, and you get maps to find these objects in the game. Now, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if you just didn't get the maps right off the bat the moment you got the Ratai, but you do get them right off the bat. The moment you get the Ratai, you can easily get some of them. Maybe not all of them, I don't have all of them, but I did get quite a few of them. And it does give you a great deal of power. And actually, this creates this highlights a bigger issue in the game. When it comes to their design, because as much of a dick move as it is to do something like that, where it is effectively buying power, which a lot of people obviously do have a problem with. I mean, people burned EA in BioWare, burned them down for doing shit like this. The controversy regarding the new Star Wars Battlefront is in large part because of the idea of buying power. So I don't want to hear how Warhorse should be able to get away with this. But there is a bigger issue when it comes to this game's design from that. That the best way of gaining money isn't to do quests, it's not to do activities, hell, it's not even to go for most of the game's systems, the lockpicking, the stealth, the haggling, any of that. It's none of that. The best way of getting stuff is to kill bandits and get their stuff, sell it at merchants. That's the most effective way. It undermines the entire stealth system, the entire lockpicking system when it comes to the towns. It undermines the thievery system, because you can't just steal items from NPCs and then just sell them up to merchants. You need to find specific merchants, or you need to wait some time before you are actually able to sell them, or before guards won't actually take the stolen goods off of you if you've fast traveled for a town. So there's a lot of systems built around the idea that getting gold is more difficult, that you can't just be a thief, take everything that isn't nailed to the floor and then just sell it. And then they undermine their own system with the bandit camps, the treasure maps, and all that. I mean, it's more so the bandit camps as opposed to the treasure maps, but obviously with the treasure maps you do have this pre-order bonus bullshit. But outside of that, The gameplay is pretty damn good. There are a lot of systems where they did put quite a lot of work with. I do like the stealth system. I do like the lockpicking system. I could throw the pickpocketing system in the Atlantic Ocean for all I care. It's a horrible system as far as I see it. But they did put quite a lot of work into all of those. There's obviously the combat system, which I am going to demonstrate right here. And there's also a lot of work within the combat system. Not so much the mounted combat, not so much the range combat. There are no crossbows, there are no handguns, and archery, quite frankly, sucks. It's not exactly the best system in the world. But the melee combat, on foot, not mounted, though you can fight from horseback, you can even fight using your bow and arrow from horseback. But when you look at the melee fighting system, there's obviously a lot more effort when it comes to that. So,
I'd like to train, but I want real combat with
a bit cock, another one. Some say, let's fight.
Alright, let's fight with the bastard sword. This is where they've put a lot of their efforts in. And obviously there are... There's quite a lot of effort in that system. And it mostly works quite well. The animations are very high quality. And it is a nice system of timed reactions. Where enemies don't have HP pulls that matter. I mean, obviously there are HP pulls, but they don't matter so much as the gear you are wearing and your opponent is wearing. And the training one might get helps them get faster, but not so much more durable necessarily against opponents. Now here, I admit, I am highlighting one of the problems with the combat system, that there are ways to cheese it if you get in a grip with someone, or if you remove their stamina so they can't really block you all that well. And mind you, this guy is wearing a full set of plate armor. And he's one of the best fighters in the game. He's very difficult to defend most of the time, unless you use tricks like that. Having said that, despite the implementation, maybe the execution of the system maybe not the best in the world, it's still a pretty good system to have in a video game, because it is a system that isn't so much about, oh, how much HP does an enemy have, as opposed to you being able to get past his defenses and knock him down. And killing opponents without armor is fairly easy. Get the sword, bang them over the head, they'll drop down, as they would in real life. Hit someone with a mace, they'll be going down very quick, or an axe. But there are still problems. There's still quite a bit of work to be done when it comes to this system. If you want an easy mode,
some say, let's fight.
I'm just skipping the hell. If you want an easy mode to fight people, get the pole arm. I mean, it is appreciated they do have pole arms, because spears were fairly significant. Like in this case, I just eliminated them in 2 seconds flat right there. Stick them at that pointy and they'll end up dead. But wearing armor is important. If you're not wearing armor, you'll be going down very quickly, so will your opponents be going down very quickly. The more armor you wear, in every slot here, I'm just missing the leg plate slot because I've been struggling with weight for a lot in this game. So I haven't really had an opportunity to do that, but wearing armor in every slot matters. The quality of the armor, its state, all that. And that system, having that kind of a system in a game is highly appreciated. The fact that they did something like that they put that kind of effort into making a system like that in the game. So that's very well done. It's just quite a bit of the execution is lacking. Why don't we have one-handed spears with shields, for instance? With, obviously, the shield wall concept, right? Just spears and shields, as it were. You can't have those. But you do have pole arms, and it's still a work in progress. I do believe that they said it was a work in progress. And obviously there's a lot more work, and it's a lot more refined when it comes to the sword system, as opposed to to say
take a shield.
maces or axes or pole arms or anything else in the game. So. And by the way, you do actually have to train your skill in skill with maces. Maces, axes, swords to unlock specific moves. Or to get better with them, you need to increase your strength in order to be able to carry more. I do feel the amount of things that Henry can carry from by default leaves a lot to be desired, but you're a peasant boy, you're not supposed to be you're not supposed to start out as this superhero that can just take on anyone and win. And it does add a real sense of progression to your character, that you actually have to train them up and, you know, get them geared. I also like the fact that when it comes to the gameplay, you do have more than one approach with regards to the game. Yeah, there we go. He's been taken down. And you do need to train your skills through fighting, like strength, agility, vitality. Well, you can increase vitality by running around the world. You need to increase all your skills, your speech skill, your horse riding skill, your archery skill. It does lend a certain sense of customization to your character, even though you can't customize your character's looks or gender or voice or anything like that. But you can customize how they play, how you play. It makes the character feel a lot more like your own than any of the ridiculous customization options do in a lot of RPGs, while still having a very action-based combat system. That's pretty well done, despite a lot of the ways to exploit that system. But then again, fighting isn't necessarily about fighting fair. It's not about fighting honorably. I mean, you can actually kill a lot of people by just sneaking up on them and stabbing them. Stealth is a real option. Playing intelligently is a real option, and it does feel rewarding in its own sense. This game is not about just going into a fight with someone and just smashing them over the head. Well, unless you do something like this. Unless you do something like this. Come on, Captain.
You call that combat?
Okay. Yeah, in this case, he is he is quite able of beating me. Ooh, what was that? I do feel it's exceptionally difficult to deal with opponents that have a shield, unless you cheese it like the way I am. By the way, this whole thing about that I'm doing with getting into a clutch with opponents and then knocking them down and then delivering a blow, that was something that you could abuse in the beta as well, or the alpha, that I did play. Yes, Captain. And there he goes, down he goes. You do, by the way, speaking about the combat system, you do take damage to your limbs, and if you take a lot of damage, you can get vulnerable to bleeding, and obviously you will end up dead if you bleed out. So there's a lot of things you need to be worried about when it comes to this title. A lot of things to care for. And if you do bleed, you will bleed out. And you will have to take care of yourself. You need to also keep yourself clean. There's also a mod for that, link in the description, that I'm actually using, that makes it more difficult. I should have mentioned that earlier, but there is a mod that makes it more difficult to get dirty. Because it does feel in this game that it's very easy to get dirty while playing the game. Like, you just walk like 100 yards and you look as if you've been through the middle of a sandstorm or something like that. Armor does feel weird in the sense it doesn't account for the fact that you might hit someone through the that if you don't hit someone through the joints, then you wouldn't actually really damage them all that much. Armor is very good at protecting you, plate armor specifically in this case, but that's kind of the problem with archery. And there's also plenty of bugs, as you can see here. The horse getting stuck in terrain. The immovable champion. There we go. That fixed him. But anyways, good gear or a good horse, fairly expensive, fairly difficult to get. Kind of ruined by the problems with the gameplay system. I'm not saying you should make it more difficult to get things in the world or make bandit camps irrelevant. No, make quests more relevant. Improve the rewards people get. Depending, of course, on the difficulty of doing actually something. Anyway, that's regarding, obviously, the gameplay. Pretty well done, though, despite quite a lot of the flaws or bugs. It is enjoyable, regardless of it. I mean, I guess you could compare it to the Elder Scrolls series, though a hell lot more interesting than the Elder Scrolls series on a gameplay level, a lot more memorable as well. No dungeons or dragon. Well, dungeons and no dragons, more like, right? Dungeons and no dragons. Well, in terms of graphics, I had the washed out graphics by default. This is a very realistic looking world. It feels as if they took a portion of medieval Europe and put it into a video game form. It reminds me of walking through peasant museums, medieval peasant museums that we have here in Romania, to a large extent. And mind you, Sigismund, one of the big characters, the big bads in the story, who, spoiler alert, will actually end up winning, though I'm not sure I'd describe close to what, 2 decades or more of civil war in Bohemia, only for him to plant his flag and say, I win. I'm not sure I'd count that as a victory of any kind of description. But he does eventually end up winning, ultimately. But there are things that are far bigger than him here. There's 2 popes, there's 3 kings vying for the crown of the Holy Roman Empire. Being crowned Holy Roman Emperor, the imperial crown as is. There's quite a lot of events taking place on a story level. So having a game that looks this amazing from an artistic point of view, that has a very lifelike world in a sense, is a real accomplishment, one they can be very proud of themselves. It does get ruined, the immersion of the world does get ruined by shitty texture quality, as an example here. It's not so much the walls, though, that are the problem. It's the door, because you interact with, obviously, a lot of doors. You interact with a lot of chests that you might use lockpicking on. You interact with tables when you play dice. And also, the way characters look, the quality on the characters is not that great. The animation quality, well, we have another game with what people have started calling the Andromeda faces. And it is the case. I mean, they do have a fair amount of motion capture in this game, and when they do have motion captures, those scenes are bloody fantastic. Great scenes, great directing, great actors, great writing. But when you don't have the motion capture, it does show. And I do feel that games should accept to an extent that motion capture just can't be the solution to everything, because as great as it is, you do end up with that disparity between motion capture and not having motion capture, and that does take someone out of the experience. And that's arguably the biggest problem with the presentation. When it works, when, you know, the stars align as is, and there's a lot of points where the stars do align in regards to this game. When the stars do align, it's a fantastic experience, an immersive experience, until you run up into a wall, to a door and try and open it, or you talk to a character and notice a shitty lip syncing or animation quality on their faces. Or you try and play dice with someone, and the table you're playing dice with is quite blurry, and the texture quality just isn't that great. The sacrifices made for the console generation, I guess, or just the sacrifices to try and get the game run in the first place. The optimization in this game is not the greatest in the world. The performance of this game is not the best in the world. And yes, there are games, specifically the Frostbite games, that do have a fairly large world with great graphics. Not as gorgeous as this one from an artistic point of view, but there are games that do run quite well. So obviously there is a learning experience, and this is the first game this company is doing, and a game that had a very troubled development. But that disparity is probably the thing that hurts the most from my perspective. It does feel as if they had a team as big as the one they did towards the end of the development of this game, because they did get a fairly large team towards the end. If they didn't have all the problems, if they had actually gotten a publisher in the first place, maybe this game would have probably ended up being a whole lot better than it did. But the troubled development cycle, running out of money, almost going bankrupt, almost seeing the whole project going down, it did have a fairly negative impact regards to the game. It's pretty interesting. It's great. It's still a significant achievement. Not only that they released the game in the first place despite all the issues they had to deal with, but that it's such an incredible experience, at least visually. Story-wise, you know, story-wise, I'll give them a great deal of credit. That they don't try and whitewash things. That they don't try and portray things from an idealistic point of view. Oh, the bad guys are evil, and thus they are monsters, or anything like that. Despite the fact that they butcher everyone that Henry knows, they're not portrayed as monsters. They're portrayed as politicians with a political goal. They have their own interests and are working to achieve their interests, and you're just collateral damage. That's the real horror of war, really. Sigismund isn't portrayed as some evil guy. In fact, he is the one that tried to protect Christianity from the Turks. Truthfully, he failed. You can thank the French for that, and Nicopolis. There's a little explanation to give for that one. But he was one of the most significant figures in European history. Maybe not one a lot of people know the most, but let me read a bit from his codex for people to understand exactly why I say that. So, characters. Sigismund of Luxembourg, right here. He regarded himself as the defender of Christianity. In 1409, even founded the Order of the Dragon to wage war against all enemies of the Christian faith. One of the latter members of the order was the infamous Vlad the Impaler, inspiration for the fictional Dracula. Actually, Dracula comes from the name, the Order of the Dragon. The dragon that they use. Because Vlad's father was originally of that order, and through translation, obviously they didn't use English for this. Through the translation, it got translated into Dracul. And obviously, from that comes Dracula. So, through the name he used, through the order he created, he played his part in creating the legend of Dracula. He's also the reason why... he's also the reason why a lot of the events taking place in European history would indeed take place. He's the reason, in a way, he's a reason in part why the Turks didn't roll up Europe. Well, that and the Timurids attacking the Turks from the east, mostly destroying them, or destroying their armed forces, and this was after Nicopolis, and severely weakening them as a result. This is the age of the Mongols, the Timurids. This is the age of the Papal Schism, so 2 popes, one in Rome, one in Avignon. This is the age of free men fighting for control of the Holy Roman Empire. Well, really, 4 men fighting for control of the Holy Roman Empire. So quite a lot of political turmoil, chaos, and this game is just the beginning. So who is Henry, your character in all of this? He's Luke Skywalker, if you want the comparison to that. All we need is someone to show up and say, I am your father. It would be complete. And this is sort of like New Hope, the beginning entry, the one where you get your bearings, get some understanding of the world you're in, and start to get a grasp on things that are going on. It's the beginning of the journey of a much bigger, far bigger and far more significant journey that is going to take place. Some people might be disappointed with that, but I do like a game that's all about self-discovery, because that's ultimately what the story is, so far at least. And a game where you do have a peasant boy that wants to explore the world, is being held back by his family, then his family dies, so he ends up exploring the world on his own, but he's also on a quest for vengeance against those that did harm him. And that's who Henry is. That's also who Luke Skywalker is, at least initially. We'll see how all of this goes and how all of this ends up going. But so far, I do like the story, I do like the performances, and Henry is a fairly relatable, likable character. The peasant boy. Just like Luke Skywalker is. I know, maybe not the best comparison in the world, and certainly it's not something that's just restricted to Star Wars, but take that however you will. It's a fairly interesting story with great performances and a game world that feels very alive when it all works. When it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. But just look at that wall right there. Look at the impressive grand scale. It's nice to have a world that feels like a world, that has the proper scale of things in a world. Because so many video game worlds don't. So many video game worlds just sacrifice scale because, well, they want to make things more accessible. They want to make things less complicated for people, or they want to restrict the world because, hey, having a large-scale world just means there's a whole bunch of nothing. But it's fine. It's fine just having a whole bunch of nothing in the world. You know, just the landscape. It's great. Just exploring for exploring's sake is great. And this does remind me of the hills and forests that I used to traverse when I was younger and spent weeks at a time going through the countryside of Romania. It does feel a lot like that. So kudos to Warhorse Studios for making a world like that. Kudos to them for going for all that effort to making the game in the first place, for putting in so much effort into this game, for not giving up. But please, we could do with a lot less of the shitty business practices that other companies adopt. And you did, and Warhorse Studios claiming that they are better than other companies. Well, this is a highly ambitious game. It doesn't quite exactly work out though, because of the bugs, because of the issues, because of the unfinished game. Really, it's an unfinished game in quite a few respects. The ultimate question though is it worth playing? Is it worth buying? Well, I would certainly recommend people get the pre-order key, however they want to do that for the armors, because those are a significant advantage. But I'd also tell people they can wait until they fix some of the issues, or quite a few of the issues that exist in the game. I have spotted some game-breaking bugs myself, so maybe people would be advised to wait with that so they can enjoy the game better. Is it worth buying at full price? Well, in all fairness, I probably can't answer that question, since I am a Kickstarter backer, so I did pay significantly less than people who are buying the game right now. For what it's worth, I probably wouldn't necessarily buy it at full price, at least in its current state, because of the various issues that do exist with it. But it's still a damn good game. an ambitious game, and we do have a significant lack of ambition in the video gaming industry as is. I think that's one of the problems right now in the gaming industry. Well, having a shitty gaming press that likes to focus on things that obviously a lot of gamers couldn't give a flying fuck about has led to a really terrible situation when it comes to game development. Because obviously game developers are not really gonna listen to a lot of reviews out there, or at least reviews that complain about not there being no black characters in the middle of Europe in the countryside of medieval Europe in Bohemia. Yeah, Eurogamer, I suggest you get your heads out of your asses because you have no idea what you're talking about. And mind you, I've spoken with people that have history degrees, and I've also studied history myself. So if this was Prague, sure. If this was some other country, sure. But this is not some other country. This is Bohemia. And mind you, minorities don't just restrict themselves to the color of their skin. And anyone that's ever spent a moment studying history would actually know that European history is a litany of blood between the various ethnicities duking it out for power and control. That European history is not just how many colored people existed in it, but also the conflict between the Germans and the Czechs, the conflict between the French and the British. Oh, by the way, the 100-Year War is taking place in the background of this game. Just a point to make right here. Lots of significant events taking place at around this time period. In fact, the thing Sigismund was responsible for, and some of the people he had as vassals, well, Wallachia, which would become one of the free principalities, which would form Romania. Wallachia was created about the same time, led by Mircea the Elder, who fought under Sigismund and Nicopolis. And Sigismund is actually buried in modern-day Romania. So, as I said, a figure in history that changed the course of all of European history. But hey, let's complain about the black people not being there in this game. I really had to scream at that. So we finally have a game that focuses on a part of European history that's actually significant, that most games don't care to, most media doesn't care to touch on, and that's what wholesome people can scream about. And that's why a lot of games that get made right now are mediocre pieces of crap. Not this one though. That's the ultimate point. This game isn't a mediocre piece of crap. It's a game that at least tries. It's a game that is ambitious. And for that, it is, at the very least, worth checking out. Whichever way people decide to do it, it is a game worth playing. And that's where I leave you. Costin here on Serious Gaming, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more.